Sometimes life just gives you these beautiful coincidences, and today is one of those days because today I'm up here in Napa Valley in St. Helena, and we're going to talk about how millionaires are choosing to rent their homes rather than buy. And coincidentally, there are millionaire homes surrounding me that are for sale. We have one right here on this corner, one across the street on the corner across the street, and then one right next to it over there. And all of these houses are houses that you can pretty much only afford if you're a millionaire. And I'll show some of these houses later in the video so you guys can see what I mean. But it's funny because these houses are all very expensive and they're all just sitting here empty for sale, waiting and hoping that some millionaire comes along and buys it. But I think a lot of them are choosing to rent instead. There are so many unrealistic listings on the market right now, it's not even funny. I mean, just take a look at this place. They've listed this house for sale since 2020, guys. 2020. And the price really hasn't changed that much. They did a big price reduction throughout the middle of 2020 or towards the end. They brought it down to about 1.7 million. They just kept lowering the price and then they kept raising the price again back in 2021, basically just chasing the market here. And now they're right back to where they started 4 years later. No one is buying this house. I mean, what does that tell you about the current state of the market? People cannot afford these houses, and the people who can, the smart millionaires, are not buying them because they know it's half the price, maybe even less than half, to rent a similar house like this. And one day, these people will get desperate enough to sell the house for the real price, whatever that may be. Now, don't get me wrong, these houses are beautiful and they're even historical in the case of this one that we just passed by. But when you're looking at dropping $2 million on a house that's like, 120 years old or something, it's kind of not that appealing. And my friend Ben sent me this story about how more and more millionaires, even though they can afford to buy their dream home, they're choosing to rent instead because they're not really able to find their dream home. The first account that they have in this story, they talk to this guy that obviously is a multimillionaire. He was house hunting in Silicon Valley and Miami and New York, and he was basically not happy with the choices that he was coming across. And this is a quote. He says, "In terms of price for value, the supply is close to zero." And I think a lot of people feel that way right now, not just millionaires, because it's not just millionaires who can afford to buy a house. Like, for example, I can afford to buy a house where I want to live in Florida, but I'm choosing not to because the prices are actively crashing and the inventory is building, so I'll just wait. Even though I could probably find the house I would want right now, why would I buy it when I know I can get a better deal on it maybe 2 or 3 years from now? It's kind of what I'm thinking. So this guy, multi-millionaire, he decides to rent a 3-bedroom apartment in a luxury Manhattan high-rise instead. And get this, between 2018 and 2022, the share of households with annual incomes of more than $750,000 that rent rose to 10.5%, which is the highest level since they've been keeping track since the mid-2000s, okay? In the previous 5 years, it was 8.4%. So more and more people that can easily afford to buy are choosing to rent instead. And I think it's a confluence of a few different things. Not only are people not really happy with the value of the home you're getting for the money, but also the rental choices and the rental prices are so much more attractive. Like even here in California, guys, like this is kind of a renter's dream in terms of like being able to rent something really nice that you would probably not be able to afford to buy, or if you could afford it, you have to pay double or triple or more. So from that perspective, it's an amazing deal. And when they look at even the richest of the rich, the top 5% in the country, about 3.7% of them are renters right now, which is the highest level that they've seen since the early 1990s. And I'm not telling you guys this to feel bad for millionaires that can't find the house that they want to buy or anything like that. I'm telling you guys this because, if you want to do better for yourself or you want to have more money in life, I think it makes a lot of sense to pay attention to what people who have a lot of money do. You have to sit and ask yourself, why would someone that can easily afford to buy a house today? Because most people have the opposite problem, right? Most people are like, I wish I could buy a house, but I just keep getting outbid, or everything I like is outside of my budget. That's not the case for these people, right? they can afford the house, but they're choosing not to buy it. And you have to sit there and ask yourself why that is. And to me, I think the answer is simple. I think most people in that position of wealth know that the market is at an inflection point right now. Things are turning around. They see the price cuts. They see the inventory rising. They see the value of what you can get for rent versus buying. And they know that waiting is probably the smartest thing to do. And then once the price does come down on the house they really want, they'll buy it then. Or maybe they'll just build it. Because let's not forget, guys, it is literally cheaper to rent than buy in all of the top 50 metros across the United States. As of right now, in 2024, there is nowhere in the top 50 metros across the country where it is a better deal right now to be a buyer than a renter. Now, obviously, there could be places that are outside those top 50 metros, but in general, it's a good time to be a renter. In this story here, they say a lot of it actually comes down to math. A lot of these millionaires would rather keep cash in the stock market and other investments, and with home prices and transaction fees elevated and high borrowing costs, it makes more sense to just keep your money invested elsewhere. Especially right now, if you're making a lot of money in the stock market, or you have other investments going on that have paid off recently, that can be throwing off enough cash or enough of a capital gain that can just pay for your rent. You don't even need to come out of pocket. People are also looking at the fact of how much property taxes and insurance have risen over the past few years. Everyone's taking note of that. Whether or not that's an issue for you and, this is an affordability problem, it doesn't matter. People are seeing like, maybe this house used to have a property tax bill of, $30,000 a year. If I buy it, I'm going to be paying $100,000 a year. That would be one of the biggest deterring factors for me, guys, ever, to buy like a really expensive house. Like, even if I can afford it, I was just talking to my wife about this yesterday. Like, say I could afford to buy a $2 million house, which I can't, but if I could, I probably still wouldn't buy it just because of the property tax bill. The property tax bill would be so insane that it's like, how can you justify paying this every year? And how do you justify having the bill go up that much just because I paid more for the house than the previous owner? It's not really fair. And now that a lot of these central appraisal districts are being found out that they're committing fraud, which a lot of you know from different videos you've seen from my friend over at Real Estate Mindset, Travis. He's been making videos with an attorney named Mitch that has uncovered this problem in Texas, and they figured out that this is happening in a lot of other places too. Don't worry, I will be talking to Mitch soon, and I'm going to ask him some relevant questions, and I may even put out a poll out there so I can get some questions that you guys might want me to ask him. And this is actually still really good for luxury real estate agents, because they talked to a luxury agent in New York that said they've done a dozen deals since this spring on rentals for $20,000 or more per month. That's like making a sale in the real estate business. If you can make a rental for $20,000 a month, that's equivalent to selling, a $2 million home in a lot of cases. So you can make a decent amount of money. As a real estate agent, I always did rentals, because especially if you can get higher end ones like this, it's just the same as making a sale, and they're easier than making sales. Remember that house from the very beginning of the video? Yeah, well, guess what? That house is a $2 million house, even though it's a small 2-bedroom, 2-bath house, and some genius real estate investor bought this back in 2021 for $1 million, thought they were going to turn around and flip it for almost $3 million, guys. Look at the original listing back in 2023. They thought 2 years later they were going to turn around and sell this house for triple what they paid for it, and clearly that didn't work. Price cut after price cut, they're down to $2 million. 3 years on the market, no takers, guys. So even if this was some millionaire's dream house, most millionaires are pretty smart. It takes a lot of brains to make a lot of money in a lot of cases, unless it's handed to you, and no one's going to turn around and hand this flipper triple or even double what they paid for this house, even if it was their dream house, because these guys are going to sit on this house so long and lose so much money that then they'll come in and buy it for the real price, which isn't going to be the price they were hoping to get. Let's say that much. Here's the other reason I wouldn't even think about, but it actually makes a lot of sense, of why a lot of millionaires are choosing to rent, and it is the time, okay? Part of the cost of ownership is not just the money you have to sink into a house, but you also the amount of time you have to sink into projects, renovations, maintenance around the house. Even if you're paying people to do all of this stuff, you still have to supervise it. You still have to check in. You still have to see how things are going. You still have to make decisions. You still have to do phone calls in order to have things go the way you want it to go. So all the money in the world doesn't keep you immune from making these important decisions, whether you're going through a renovation or just, keeping track of the landscaper every week. And some of these millionaires are just like, you know what? I would rather take that extra time and be able to go out to dinner with my wife one more time per week, or spend extra times with my family and kids, something like that, rather than spend it managing a house. So just think about all this stuff. If you're someone out there who's been desperate to buy a home and you feel frustrated that you're not able to for whatever reason right now, just know that there are people out there on the sidelines choosing not to buy because they know that the current climate isn't quite right. And hopefully that will give you consolation in knowing that waiting a little bit longer could be the right decision for you. Now check this out. We all know that the condo fees in Florida are exploding due to the new laws that are coming into effect starting in 2025. All of the buildings have to have full reserves starting next year, and that's costing these places an absolute fortune. And one thing that was just uncovered is that now the average maintenance fee for a condo in Miami is now up to $1 per square foot, guys. And that actually sounds pretty accurate because my place is a little over 1,500 square feet and my maintenance fee is about $1,600 before a special assessment payment that I have to pay. It's almost right on point. And I wanted to bring this up because people need to know that when you're looking at buying a condo in Florida in general, this doesn't just apply to Miami now. You're going to have to pay for these reserves moving forward no matter where you buy in Florida. And so if you're looking at places for sale and you see that you're looking at 1,000 square foot apartment, let's say 1,000 square foot condo for sale, and the maintenance fee is only $550 a month, that's a red flag and almost a guarantee that you're going to see that fee go up in the near future. So I wanted to let people know that this could be something to look out for when you're looking to buy a condo these days. And remember, that's just an average, so yeah, it could be a little bit lower. I mean, if you're looking at 1,000 square foot condo and the maintenance fee is $800 or $850 a month, then it might be reasonable to think that it probably won't go up too much from there. Maybe they're already collecting the necessary reserves at that point. And you also got to remember that in some places it's just going to be a lot higher. Some buildings that have a ton of amenities and more luxury-based buildings, you're going to pay far more than that per square foot. It could be quadruple, $4 or $5 a square foot in maintenance fees. I can show you guys one-bedroom condos in Miami right now that have maintenance fees of like $2,500, $2,700 a month, guys. No joke. So it really does vary, but we're talking kind of like an average building, something that doesn't have crazy amounts of amenities, maybe just the pool, the gym, and parking, the normal stuff. But all of these assessments and all of the increases in maintenance fees are becoming so unaffordable to people that there are now banks offering loans to help out with this. Miami-Dade County even has a program now to help people pay for this. They'll give you an interest-free loan for up to like 40 years or something like that. But the thing is, you have to have income qualifications to be able to qualify for that no interest loan from the county. And if you don't, you can get a loan through a regular bank right now. Some banks are giving out loans for this. They range from anywhere between like 3 and 12 years. And the interest rates are pretty much on par with a mortgage, guys. So people who can't afford these assessments and are, trying to stay in their condos are literally now facing a situation where they have 2 mortgage payments just to be able to afford to stay in their house. I mean, that's how insane this is. Now, I've already showed you some of the listings here and how long these places are just sitting on the market at high prices and not really moving, right? Well, I want to show you an example of a listing that one of my viewers sent me. His name is also Mike, and he sent me this listing up in Virginia. And he said this area has always had a strong military presence, and so the prices have always been kind of high up there. But now he's starting to see exactly what I've been saying happen in the local market, where you're starting to see prices come down pretty dramatically for properties that were always very desirable. So this is the listing here. The current price is $255,000, but they listed it back on May 1st of this year for $320,000, and they have cut the price about 5 times since then. The latest price cut was a $19,000 price cut, and they have literally cut the price 20% since they listed this house, guys. And this is becoming more and more commonplace in all different parts of the country. I've showed you multiple listings here that are selling for less than they even did 2 years ago. Forget about a price cut. These guys are losing huge money. That's all the more reason to be patient, and all the more reason to be okay with the fact that, maybe it's all right that, I haven't been able to find a house just yet, because the market is changing. Now, I got a question from one of my viewers, Christina. She's a snowbird, and she asked me, can you tell us what to look out for this year when coming down to rent a condo in South Florida? I'm assuming she's, referring to all of the problems that are happening with condos right now, and probably not wanting to get stuck with a bad one, right? She basically asked what I would do if I were a renter coming down to South Florida this winter. So the first thing I would do, guys, is I would make sure 100% that the place that you're planning on renting, say you find something you like, is not under construction, because sometimes the listing photos do not do it justice. You need to have a virtual tour with the real estate agent, or go down and actually see it yourself. And even if there's nothing happening right now, you need to find out, is there anything going to be happening during your stay? Because the last thing you want is you paying big money for a short-term rental in Florida, and then halfway through your stay, you're hearing jackhammers every day. Who wants that? Because a lot of these buildings now are going to be undergoing concrete restoration or other things that are very noisy, very disruptive, very dusty. It's even a reason that I wouldn't want to stay in my own building while this is happening. That's how bad it is to experience. You really don't want to go through it. So that would be the first thing that I would look out for. The second thing is, I would be also very cautious about finding one of these rentals on a short-term rental website like Airbnb or Vrbo or any place like that, because a lot of people that put these places up there are not legally authorized to do so. Sometimes it's tenants that are subleasing the place illegally, not allowed to do it. Sometimes it's actually the owner of the property who is also attempting to rent it out short term to recover some of their costs and how much money they're losing on the place, but they're not actually allowed to do it. Because one thing you have to understand is that short-term rentals are allowed in some buildings, but most of them don't allow it. Okay, so if you see a lot of condo listings on Airbnb, that would give me a reason to pause and wonder, are these listings even legal? Okay, so if you find one on there, you need to do your own due diligence and double check with the building and make sure that those short-term rentals are allowed. Otherwise, you can find yourself in a situation where you rent the place and then you get there and you kind of have to dance around the rules and try not to get caught and try not to pretend that you're a short-term renter, all kinds of things like that the owners will tell you to do, like, oh, don't talk to the front desk, or always sneak in through the back, I don't have a key fob for you, otherwise they'll catch you. All these little games to play, don't do it. It's not worth it. You're going to be paying a lot of money to stay in a place, and you're going to feel like you're constantly hiding from somebody, and you don't want that. And that's when I really suggest finding the place through a real estate agency that specializes in vacation rentals, or just any real estate agent really can help you. That's not something I can recommend to you guys, unfortunately, because all of the agents I work with only work with sales. But if you work with a real estate agent on the rental, then there's a much higher probability that you're going to get into a place that's legitimate, and you're not going to get into a situation where you're not supposed to be renting it short term, and you're not going to be worrying about any trouble with that. So those are the things I would look out for. And honestly, I know a lot of people probably can't do this. Most people don't. And in fact, in my experience, almost no one ever did this, because I did some snowbird rentals back in the day. But if you can, I would go tour the places in person just to make sure it's what you want. Most of the time, nothing ever really looks as good in the pictures as it does in real life. At the very least, do like a FaceTime or video call with the agent or whoever's showing you the place. Going to see something in person is the only way to get a real feel for the layout. What does it smell like? you know, how good the view really is, the location if you're unfamiliar with the area, things like that. But I would hope that if you're going to rent the place sight unseen and not do a personal visit, then at least you know the area well enough that you feel confident in making that decision. Now here's some interesting data on what things were like when baby boomers bought their homes and what they plan on doing in the future. There's a bunch of information that just came out through the Florida Realtors talking about this, and they say that half of baby boomers bought their first home for $75,000 or less, and 64% of them paid under $100,000 at the time, and 44% earned less than $30,000 a year, which is literally only a quarter of the annual income required now to buy the median price home in the country. You need to earn now $120,000 a year to be able to afford the median price house in the United States. But here's where things get interesting. Fewer than half of boomers, only 47%, needed dual incomes to buy their homes, and only 6% cited high home prices as their biggest challenge when buying. So once again, when you get told by a boomer that, oh, you know, you guys just don't want to work as hard, it's definitely easy to buy a house today, you just have to, you know, work harder and save more money and not buy $5 coffees and all of that. Well, just remember, this is coming straight from a baby boomer survey of what things were like for them. And I'm not sitting here saying it was easy and they didn't have to do anything. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it was easier than what young folks have to deal with today. Because if only 6% of baby boomers thought that high home prices was a reason not to buy, then obviously that's completely opposite from today. That's like the number one reason that everyone isn't or cannot buy today, like we just talked about for the first half of this video. And literally everyone today pretty much needs a dual income to buy a house, whereas back then it was not even half. It was only 47% of people needed that dual income to buy. And we know that boomers are slowly starting to admit that things are not as easy as they think right now, because according to this data, only 50% of baby boomers believe they could still afford a house today if they had to rebuy their same house or go back into the market and buy right now. Baby boomers have the highest percentage of home ownership than any other generation right now, and if only half of them could go out and afford to buy, well, that just goes to show you that it's not as easy as some people think. But this is where it gets funny, because 57% of baby boomers believe younger generations could afford homes if they tried harder, and about 7 in 10 of them think there would be fewer problems if younger generations were more like them. Excuse me. But I know a lot of baby boomers feel so bad about this that they're giving their kids and their grandkids a ton of money to go out and buy houses, because that's literally how more than half of young people are even affording to buy a house today. So I guess at least they're helping, but at the same time it makes things worse, which is kind of ironic, right? Like, you help your kid or your grandkid get into a house today, but all that does is drive up the cost of housing and all the costs surrounding housing, which ends up making it harder for them in the long run. So go figure. Guess that's why all the millionaires and smart people are deciding to wait right now. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you're subscribed, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.